Bonjour la classe. Aujourd'hui, nous travaillons avec les mots depuis et pendant. Allons-y. Let's start with the word depuis. Depuis means since, in the sense of since when. So you use depuis to talk about how long something's been going on. And it's implied that what you're talking about is still going on. So, say you wanted to ask someone how long they've been doing something. You would start your question with depuis, and then you could follow it up with quand, meaning when, since when. Depuis quel âge, what age, since what age. Or depuis combien de temps, since how much time, or in English we would say for how long. Then you would follow it up with the rest of your question, and your verb would be in the present tense, because you're talking about something that is still ongoing. Let's look at some examples. So let's talk about how long I've been a professor. Madame Greenwood est professeure depuis 2009. So I've been a professor since 2009. And you notice that it's still in the present tense. The verb être is in the present tense because I'm still a professor. Madame Greenwood est professeure depuis 2009. So I can use depuis plus a specific point in time, like a year. Let's look at another way of saying the same thing. Madame Greenwood est professeure depuis 16 ans. So I've been a French professor for 16 years. So it's the same information. But instead of saying the year, I'm saying how long I've been a professor. Depuis 16 ans. Since 16 years, or for 16 years is how we would say it in English. Let's look at another way of saying it. Madame Greenwood est professeure depuis l'âge de 23 ans. So, I've been a professor since the age of 23. So you can follow depuis up with a specific moment in time, or such as 2009 or the age of 23, or with a span of time, 16 years. It can go either way. Let's look at another example. Or let's look at several other examples. Et toi, depuis quand est-ce que tu conduis? Madame Greenwood conduit depuis 2001. So depuis quand is since when. So we're asking for a specific point in time. Depuis quand est-ce que tu conduis? So you would say je conduis depuis. I've been driving since, but notice that drive is in the present tense. Je conduis depuis. And then what year did you start driving? 2019, 2020. What year did you start driving? Depuis combien de temps est-ce que tu étudies à UNCW? W. So this question is asking about a span of time, right? Since how long, or for how long have you studied at UNCW? So we would want to answer this question with the number of years you've been studying at UNCW, or perhaps the number of months if you've been studying for less than a year. So, j'étudie à UNCW depuis 1 an, 2 ans. How long have you been studying at UNCW? Let's look at one last example. Depuis quel âge est-ce que tu as un portable? So, quel âge is what age, right? So, since what age do you have a cell phone? So, j'ai un portable depuis l'âge de would be how you would start your answer. So, j'ai un portable depuis l'âge de 10 ans. I have a cell phone since the age of 10 years. Or maybe you were 15, 15 ans. So, depuis quel âge est-ce que tu as un portable? So now that we've learned some of the different ways we can use depuis, let's do our practice for this part of the lesson. So this is class canvas A. You're going to do l'activité A. Carole, C, et Thomas, D, deux étudiants étrangers à l'Université de Genève, parlent de leur vie en Suisse. So they're at the University of Geneva and they're talking about their life in Switzerland. Avec un ou une camarade, à tour de rôle, posez-vous les questions et répondez. Utilisez depuis quand ou depuis combien de temps selon l'indice. So you're going to look at the hint to decide whether you're going to use depuis quand or depuis combien de temps in the question. So let's look at the example. Carole asks about habiter Europe 2016. So we have just the fragments of a sentence here, habiter Europe. And so what is she asking? She's asking how long he's been in Europe. But she asks, the answer we see is 2016, 2016. So the answer is a specific time. So we know that our question is going to use depuis quand, since when, because our answer is a specific time. So the question is depuis quand est-ce que tu habites en Europe? And Thomas answers, j'habite en Europe depuis 2016. So you have to flesh out the sentence, and then you have to write both the question and the answer. So we're not in class, so we can't practice in a group. So you're going to write out both the questions and the answers yourselves. And you can go ahead and pause a minute and do that activity. And then we'll move on with the lesson. All right, welcome back. Now, we've talked about depuis, which means since a certain period of time. Now let's talk about pendant. This is another word that talks about time, but it talks about during. What's happening during a specific span of time? So you can talk about pendant to talk about specific periods of time. So, pendant l'hiver, j'aime tricoter. So, during the winter. So, we can talk about during a season, for example. Pendant l'hiver, j'aime tricoter. let's look at another example. Pendant les vacances de Noël, j'ai passé du temps avec ma famille. So you notice in this example, the sentence is in the passé composé. Pendant les vacances de Noël, during Christmas vacation, I spent time with my family. J'ai passé du temps avec ma famille. Let's look at a last example. Pendant le week-end prochain, je vais faire une randonnée. So next weekend, pendant le week-end prochain, je vais faire une randonnée. So you're going to use whatever tense is most logical. It's not like depuis. You use whatever tense makes sense in the context. And you can also use pendant to talk about what you're going to do for a certain amount of time. So demain, je vais étudier pendant 2 heures. Tomorrow, I'm going to study for 2 hours, pendant 2 heures. Hier, j'ai étudié pendant 2 heures. Yesterday, I studied for 2 hours. J'étudie pendant 2 heures chaque jour. I study for 2 hours every day. So you can use pendant to talk about what you're doing during a certain period of time or for a certain period of time. So let's practice using depuis, pendant, and our old friend il y a. So il y a, remember from our last chapter, means that it happened a certain while ago. So complétez les phrases suivantes en utilisant depuis, pendant ou il y a. So we're going to use depuis to talk about things that are ongoing, but that started at a certain time in the past. We're going to use pendant to talk about how long we were doing things or during what period things occurred. And we're going to use il y a to talk about how long ago something happened. So you're going to read the passage and you're going to decide which of these is the most accurate. Which of these fits in each sentence the best. All right. Voilà la leçon pour aujourd'hui. Bon courage avec les travaux et à demain.